start recording. And so we're going to go ahead and get started for today. Welcome to the Coping with COVID-19 webinar series. Today's series is Finding Empowerment Through Self-Care and Caring for Others. So as we continue along, just a couple of things that we want to say as you are coming into our session. Make sure that you have your mic on mute. Make sure that you're muted while in today's session. What we're also going to do is just say that our conversations will be led through the chat box. So there's a chat feature down at the bottom of your webinar series. That's where we're going to ask questions. We ask that you do participate if you can. We love having that back and forth chatter. It allows for us to get to know you, as well as you get a moment to speak to other participants, to speak with the speaker. I will be reading comments out so that we have this rich discussion. And as we continue on, we'll have moments where if there are questions that are outside of our questions, we'll have that moment to talk with you particularly about that. But I think we've done a good job in setting up the room for today. So what I'd like to talk about is what is the purpose of this webinar. The focus of this webinar is to address the difficulty of maintaining a good self-care routine during times of high stress, especially if you are tasked with caring for others, which we all are in some ways. After completing this webinar, you will be asked to identify at least 3 key mental health tools to prioritize your health and well-being during these times of challenges. All right. A little bit about Henry Health. Henry Health is a disruptive platform created to arrest the toxic stress, depression, anxiety, and killing too many Black men too soon. Our digital community provides self-mastery support and culturally sensitive therapy to Black men so that they can show up whole, operate with joy, and live with power. A couple of the housekeepings, as I mentioned before, is just that we want to make sure that you know that this is being recorded and that we will be presenting it to the public. For anybody that wants to visit henry-health.com/coping with COVID-19 /. At the end of today's presentation, we will take more questions, as I mentioned before, but as you feel free, please use the chat feature. That's what it's there for. We would love to chat with you. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. So lastly, we'd like to encourage that you share today's webinar with your social networks. So if you enjoyed, or if something else is coming up where we do have some other webinars, please share that. All right. So as we continue on, we ask that you mute yourself upon entry, and we've done that. And thank you, because you're all muted at this time. I'd like to introduce our speaker. So Michelle B. is the content director at Henry Health and leads all content from mental wellness to self-mastery. Michelle is constantly building a transformational stream of communication for our members. Michelle is a licensed psychotherapist with over 14 years of behavioral health knowledge and evidence-based expertise. Michelle has worked with Kaiser Permanente, Advanced LA, and several agencies throughout Los Angeles County. Without further ado, I turn it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Span, for that wonderful welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here with us today. I think talking about self-care has been a passion of mine. It's why I went into mental health, and specifically self-care for communities of color, because of the disparities in wellness. And I think it's very, very crucial that we touch on that specifically with COVID-19 and what's going on. Today, I will be using a 3-step framework to talk about self-care and caring for others. So we're going to define, acknowledge, and adjust. And if you've noticed, that's been the framework for this series, and we will continue to use this framework. So when we're talking about self-care, we're specifically talking about the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. And when we talk about caregiving, we're talking about if you are a caregiver, a family member or paid helper who regularly looks after a child or a sick, elderly, or disabled person. So you're tasked with the responsibility of their well-being. So I'm going to ask you guys to begin using the chat feature and answer this question. How would you rate your self-care? And use a scale of 0 to 10. 0 meaning what self-care, and 10 would be the best self-care. And I'll give you guys a little time to do that. And Dr. Span can let me know what he's seeing in terms of where we are with our self-care. Let me
So
go back
far,
this way.
what we're already seeing is that a couple of participants have put a 7, and I personally put an 8. So that's actually really good right at this time, that, for those that have put their numbers in, find themselves doing not so bad with their self-care. So that's good to hear at this time.
Okay, good.
Lucky 7.
Lucky 7. I like that. There's room for enhancement, and we're past the 5. So that's nice, And I'm wondering on today's webinar, how many of you are caregivers? So you have your children at home right now, or you're taking care of a family member, or maybe you're one of our paid healthcare workers and you're paid to care for others.
So not seeing anything just yet when it comes to being a caregiver. I'm wondering also, if we think about it maybe in a broader sense, and what does that mean to also think about how that care looks for others?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at things that we're faced with acknowledging right now. So the devastating impact on African Americans regarding COVID-19. So the disparities between the actual number of African Americans that are part of the population versus the number of COVID deaths. So you can see Louisiana, it's African Americans make up 30%, 32% of the population, but in terms of COVID deaths, we're at 70%. Illinois make up 15% of the population, but 42% of the COVID deaths. Michigan, 14% of the population, 41% of the deaths. And there are other states that have chimed in that aren't on this graph. But as you can see, that it's overwhelming to see these numbers and to know that this is the case. And I'm wondering if anyone has ideas on what they think is causing this. Like, what have you heard? What do you think is the reason for these disparities? And for this devastating, like, these numbers are, in some cases, double or triple the population. And Dr. Span, I'll give people time to maybe chime in, but I'll share some of the things that have been reported as reasons for this. So just historically, the racial disparities in health, economic, education, and transportation, or transportation deserts or food deserts. So all of those things have had an impact on health and wellness in the African American communities. Also pre-existing conditions. So, and this is a result of things like structural racism. So there have been disparities in who gets treatment and the type of treatment that they get, and who has insurance and who does not have insurance. High blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, COPD, so people who have chronic pulmonary obstructive disorder or any other respiratory things, have been things that have been listed as very, very high rates, specifically among African American men, and the impact of the deaths have been really more significant in African American men. So what this means is that before COVID even became a concern, we were struggling with these pre-existing conditions.
And thank you for saying that, Michelle. And what we're seeing in the chat box is some are saying just a lack of adequate resources within those communities.
Mm-hmm.
Many don't believe that this is real, and a lack of access to healthcare. Again, limited access to quality healthcare, which is a major thing, quality healthcare. Again, disbelief, and again, just a mistrust of information. They are given because of the historical mistrust of society's leaders, which is also empowering.
Yep. I think we've seen the most irresponsible reporting. It's very, very hard to get facts and to get information when you have leaders saying, it's fine, don't worry about it. And then you have other people saying, take this very, very seriously. So I think I really appreciate that communication going on in the chat, that there's a disbelief, like some people just don't believe that it's going to impact them. And there were groups that were told that COVID wasn't going to impact them, right? We were told that it was a disease for older people, that kids weren't getting it, that it wasn't going to impact healthy people. And all of that has been dispelled. So I really want to share this quote with everyone today. We're a special people. We're the best and the brightest our ancestors ever produced. So I think it's important to, when we're talking about self-care, it's important to remember who we are. And it's important to know that you have the power to make changes. There's something to be done here. On a bigger scale, it kind of feels like systems are failing and access to resources are challenging. And it can be easy to fall into the trap of thinking, there's nothing I can do. And so today I really want to encourage people with steps and things that we can do that are very powerful things that can keep us healthy and keep our loved ones and those we care for healthy. So what we're going to be looking at is individual change, like things that we can do ourselves with our self-care and taking care of others. Collective change, right? Us and our community and how we do that together. And then the system change. A lot of our power is going to be on the individual change. That's where we're going to be most powerful to change things about our day-to-day movements that keep us safe and healthy. The collective change is also within our reach. It's our resources and things in our communities and people that are stepping up to help one another. The system change is something that's down the road. I think a lot of our energy might want to go there at being angry and upset with systems that were charged with keeping people safe and taking care of people, and they have failed. And so when we focus there, we're getting further from our source of power. But we don't want to forget about them. We definitely want to see systems change, but the first step to doing that is starting with our individual change. So here are some things that you have the power to impact that can reduce your stress, anger, unhappiness, and symptoms related to illness. So first we want to focus on a healthy mindset. So sometimes our mind goes, it's not a big deal, so I'm just going to run to the store. And we're not practicing the things we know can keep us safe. So we really want a mindset of this is serious, that it's impacting lives, that people are getting sick, people are dying, and there are things we know that can keep us safe and that can help. So we want to have our mindset know what we can do to protect ourselves, what we can do to deal with boredom. Like, you know, some people are not practicing social distancing because they're bored and they want to be around people. There's anxiety, there's fear and worry. And I think it's important to have a mindset of there's things that I can do. So wearing a mask, wearing gloves, practicing the social distancing, keeping 6 to 10 feet between you and others. Also, we have to practice focusing on our health and well-being, and we just keep going, right? So those practices that we know are important, like washing our hands, if we have pre-existing conditions, taking our medication, doing the things that bring blood pressure down, doing the things that, if you're diagnosed with any type of illness, that you're managing that, and you're doing the things that can help manage that illness. Also, habits that protect you and vulnerable populations that you may be caring for, which is the hygiene. So keep germs away. There are a lot of things online that walk through, for instance, how long COVID lasts on different surfaces, right? How long it lasts on plastic or steel, or how to, clean your door handles, or what steps to take in your home to keep germs away. So I think it's important to invest time and energy in learning how to keep your environment safe and how to clean surfaces and take good care of yourself and your home and those around you. Also, nutrition. So eat to live well. How you eat can help you build immunity. It can also help with illnesses and reduce flare-ups of a lot of pre-existing conditions. Movement and exercise. So that's going to also boost your mood and your immune system. So it's really important that even though we are shelter in place, that we get movement in the body, because it will help give us immunity. So these are some tips that come from the Mayo Clinic health systems regarding physical health. So not only eating healthy and well-balanced foods, we also want to be drinking plenty of water. Also, hot beverages are very good to keep the respiratory system nice and healthy. Aim to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep each night. Also, exercising every day. Taking deep breaths and stretching often. Avoid risky or destructive behaviors such as abusing alcohol or drugs, excessive gambling, or ignoring public health recommendations. Spend time outside. So we know we get a lot of nutrition from the sun, just nutrients and things that fuel our body come from nature. So if you're able to go outside and go for a walk, just remember to follow social distancing guidelines. As far as mental health tips, it's so important to set a routine at home. Everything has been really disrupted with the shelter in place. So all of the things that were part of our normal routine are no more. And so for the mind and the body, this creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So the sooner things can find some kind of rhythm or routine, the better for your mind and your body. So if you're able to do that, like waking up at the same time. So it's really easy to just let your sleep get dysregulated, your eating habits, because everything is happening in one environment. You're not moving from place to place. So I would encourage you to set times for, if you can, for meals, for waking up, for working if you're working from home. Also focus on things you can control. Use technology to maintain social connections. Focus your thoughts on the present moment and things to be grateful for today. Anxiety really exists when we go beyond the present moment. If we go too far into the future with our worry about, am I going to get sick? Are people I love going to get sick? What's going to happen with the economy? And what's going to happen with, we could go down that road for a very, very long time, and we don't know. And so there's a big ask for people to just have radical acceptance that we don't know. And that's really scary. And yet what we can do and what we do know is that today, I need to wake up and prepare meals and like wash the laundry. So focus on the things that are in front of you that need to be accomplished, that you can do, that are in your control to keep moving forward. Also, they recommend listening to music or reading books. also limit the amount of news that you're watching and the sources. So anything that has a huge, they're sensationalizing it for emotional, to get people to react, definitely limit that. And if you can, just avoid that altogether and really focus on reliable news sources, getting the news that you need, and then unplugging. Also, lean on your personal beliefs and faith for support. Here, I think it's important for us to have a conversation about the faith-based communities, and there's varying support from people who are still holding services for church or spiritual gatherings, and people that are adamant that it's not safe and that's not healthy. And so I'm wondering if the people that are here today have any beliefs or comments or thoughts on that they'd want to share in the chat, that you're experiencing regarding how you maybe use your personal beliefs or your faith for support at this time, or any concerns that you're having around access to that faith-based community. And the last recommendation is to acknowledge and appreciate what others are doing to help in your communities. So while we don't have, in a lot of ways, any federal, like everyone saying the same thing, everyone on the same page, and a federal guideline and support, I think in our communities, there are people that are stepping up and things that are happening. So it's good to put our gaze and our attention on what people are doing and what is available to help support us through these difficult times. There's a lot of food banks and shelters and services that are becoming available. So I think it's really important to stay connected to your communities and what supports are available. Dr. Span, do you have anything you want to add to the mental health section, or anything in the chat you'd like to share with the group?
Not per se. I know that so far, I just want to say there was one last tidbit from the chat box where there was a mention of there are some church leaders who tell their members to have faith, trust God, and continue to assemble. And so I thought that was very meaningful, and William wanted to share that. So that was the last piece that came out of the last chat box.
Yep. William, thank you so much for expressing that. There was a CNN article that came out about Bishop Gerald Glenn, who was one of the bishops who said that and felt that God was bigger than COVID-19, and that the precautions that were being told were what we needed to stay safe. He was encouraging that God is bigger than all of that. And I think in our community, it's very, very important to talk about this, because he contracted COVID-19, and sad to say that he is deceased. And so it's this conflicting information about how do we keep our faith, how do we stay safe, and what does that look like. I think it's a very relevant conversation. I know some of the other gatherings that have happened that were faith-based, there were some news reports of people, like how many people out of that gathering contracted COVID-19. And so I think there's a balance between our beliefs and faith and keeping ourselves safe, and the information that we have about how to protect ourselves. And if we have pre-existing conditions, that we're taking care of ourselves, and how we do that, the things that really keep us healthy and well. So I'm not sure if there's any other additions to that in the chat, Dr. Span, or any of your thoughts.
Well, William did give a response back, and I, speaking in his voice, and just saying that, there's some disregard to Scripture, and Scripture telling us to obey the law of the land, and some leaders are selective in which Scriptures they obey. And so, providing Romans 13 verses 1 through 2, obey the government. And what I'd like to say about what I appreciate that is that, people taking time to understand what this means for them, using their own knowledge to read and just be very safe, and also sharing that with others, because that's caregiving. Like, you're caring for others by saying, hey, my loved one that may be still attending a church or going somewhere where it's like, we have to think about the law of the land and what is it saying for us, because it's that social responsibility that we have to have, and that we have to stay safe and make sure our loved ones, or those that we may be just caring for, are staying safe.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're all taxed with finding ways to be safe, to care for one another, to address this issue of gathering, whether that's for faith-based reasons or funeral services, or when these are things that are traditionally a cornerstone of the Black community, and now they are in jeopardy, and we're kind of on different sides of the fence, or people are trying to figure it out. I think we're all, in essence, wanting the same thing, which is health and wellness, and to be able to take care of each other. And so I think right now, more than ever, that question of how we do that is crucial. The final section of the Mayo Clinic Health System's recommendations are symptoms to watch for. And this, again, I think that we've historically had a stigma with reaching out for help for a lot of valid reasons, right? There's personal reasons, of feeling like I got it, I don't need help, as well as reasons of mistrust of systems to really take care of African Americans. So these are things to watch for. And I think that it's important to know who is a trusted source that you're willing to reach out to. And so if there's trouble focusing on daily activities, if there's anxiety that turns into feelings of being out of control, and for that, let's kind of break that down. So with anxiety, when it peaks, there are things like panic attack, shortness of breath, rapid heartbeat. So it can feel similar to, people have described it as similar to a heart attack, just feeling like you can't breathe, your heart is racing, feeling like you might pass out, tingling, numbness, fatigue, dizziness. So any of that, it's going to be important to reach out for support. Also, strong feelings that interfere with daily activities, having emotions that become difficult to manage, and feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. So I'm curious, when we look at caring for ourselves, what are some things during this time that you have made it a point to do for yourself? So if you could use the chat feature, what are you doing for self-care? And maybe if you could share one or two things. I imagine with all of you guys being like sevens and sixes and sevens, that you're doing a lot right. I imagine you're taking care of your health, you're maybe drinking water, or going for walks, or eating well balanced meals, exercising. And Dr. Span, I wonder if you would share a little bit about what you do for your self-care or have been doing.
Sure. Just for me, I know personally, I like humor, and I allow humor to be that moment where I laugh and I, get to release the endorphins, but at the same time, it just puts me into a place where it reminds me of when things were maybe a little bit more happier time. And it's also something that my family does. We use laughter and humor through some of the more serious times to get us through. in addition to resting for me. So what I'm seeing from some other people is getting more into meditation and learning about breathing techniques. I think focusing on breath and just being very mindful about that is good. Um, Limiting intake of news, social media, resting, listening to music, reading, writing, and doing my best to eat well and drink plenty of water. And then last but not least, attempting to be consistent with exercise and be accountable to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, accountability. I'm so glad that was mentioned. Um, because there's a lot of times there's changes that we know we need to make or we want to make, and what can make the difference is accountability, right? Having somebody to hold us accountable or somebody who cares for us, let them know what we're up to so that they can be encouraging or they can check in on us to see how we're doing with those goals. And now I would like to challenge everyone to think about something that they've wanted to start doing. They recognize there's a need for improvement with their self-care. So I'm wondering what you can start doing today to improve your self-care. Maybe something that you used to do that kind of slipped out of your life, or something new you want to introduce to take care of yourself. And for me personally, what just came to mind is I was so good about drinking the water, the 8 ounces, 8, 8, and 8, Dr. Span. Was that what you shared last time? I was doing so well, and I definitely fell off. So I definitely want to get back on that.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing as I put something in the chat box, is that, you know, just being in the moment. And I have this kind of mantra, and I'm sure, Michelle, you may also know about it. It's, you know, just being in the moment. So just for today, you know, as you said yesterday, or maybe at some point you fell off with your drinking your water, but you think, hey, I can start again today. So just for today, I will focus on my 8 glasses of water. And just for tomorrow, when you get into that day, you do the same thing. And I also echo just saying, guarding my time, just being very guarded about that. Because at one time it was like, I got all the time in the world, come and get some. And then at some point, no, you got too much of my time. Let me start bringing this back and get structured. And so that's what I've done in the last couple of weeks. But what I've seen, some people have said, take time to relax, watch a movie, just do nothing. Excellent. I usually don't take time to relax, which is good that you're pivoting and reassessing this, and allowing others to occupy my time and space. I allow others to occupy my time and space. So I presume that is in a way of sharing that and allowing that to be. So there's times where it is me time, but there's times where you can share your time in a healthy way. So that's what we have so far.
Okay, well, today it sounds like we all have something to focus on just for today, like you said, Dr. Span. So those were all things at the individual change level, things we can do for ourselves. And even in protecting and caring for ourselves, we are caring for those around us. We're setting an example. And when we're healthy, we can take care of others. Um, in the collective change, this is the together we can make it through. And somebody mentioned in the chat about lack of resources, right? Being a cause for some of those disparities. So it's really important that we focus on resources and supports. And there's two types I want to highlight today, and those are formal supports and informal supports. So formal supports are services that are provided by professionals, so like doctors and therapists and dentists. And so each of us has like a network of formal supports to keep us healthy and to keep us well. And we also have a network of informal supports, right? And these are people that aren't paid, they're in our lives because they're part of our family, or they're in our community, or they're our friends, or maybe we belong to any other kind of group, a professional organization, a fraternity, a sorority, a church community, a faith-based community. So I think that during these times when we're very overwhelmed, we have a hard time thinking about our network and how vast our networks are. And so I really encourage you to use your formal supports. If something is bothering you, you know, a lot of things are available with telemedicine. So you can call the doctor's office and share what your symptoms are or share your needs. So sometimes with the formal supports, it might be you need, you know, you want a 3-month supply of your routine medication so that you can stock up and not have to worry about them. If you have to go out to a place to get them, you want to just go one time. Some of them have mail order medication services. So you want to make sure whatever support you need from your formal supports that you reach out to them and you ask for what you need. If you need like a wellness checkup. So sometimes you have like routine visits that are just a kind of, you're doing well, but they, you know, want to take your blood work or do routine checkups. Maybe reaching out and seeing how crucial that is. So for you, it might be okay to push a routine visit back. Other people that may really be something they might have to share with you, or they may want to get more levels on certain things. So just have conversations. And if you don't need to go into places and things can be sent to you at home, if you're a caregiver, maybe for the person you're caring for, you want to do those things. Find out what all their medications are, have those sent to the home, and find out if you can move routine appointments back to a time when it's more safe for yourself or for them to go in and have those things done. So let nothing and nobody break your spirit. Let the unity in the community remain intact. So I think it's important to realize that there is unity in our communities, right? There are places and people that think how we think, that are doing what they can to help one another. And the hard part with this is that we really want our systems that are set up to take care of people to do their job. But if we stay focused on that, you know, we stay angry and our needs aren't met. Because if we're waiting for them to change and they're not changing, then we aren't being served. So there are people in our communities that are stepping up and meeting the needs of people. So I think it's important to really look for those people and those services that are available in our communities. The last type of change is the system change, right? And it's been a long time that these systems have existed this way, not serving and meeting the needs of the African American community. So I feel like as we change, then human beings are changing, and we are the people that can go into these systems. And if we're different, the people around us start to change. So we look at how do we impact things from our personal life that can then make big change in the systems. And so I think that being a human being right now, caring for each other, showing up for one another, resources that you have that might go to other people, or resources other people may have that come to you, is what changes everything. Because I think communities are being transformed, and I don't think we're going back to anything. I think we're moving forward and creating something new. So while you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. So I think that I think it's so important right now to focus on your health and well-being, control what you can control, and help those around you when you have the ability to do so. Um, you know, it hasn't been a common thing to ask for help for a lot of people. And I think that realizing that there are family members and people in your community that want to be a support, and whether that's, you know, getting groceries, having a system in place with you and the neighbors around you. Maybe somebody's going to the store and they get extra things, so that limits the fact that you have to go out. or things like that. There's networks and systems being set up to really help each other through these times. And I think it just starts with us. Like, how do we do the best we can each day and focus on our health and well-being and taking care of those around us? And then Dr. Span, I just want to check in while we reach our conclusion for today and see if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, nothing that I'd like to add. Maybe this could be a quick time if we see if there are any questions from the audience. But I think very well done, just from everything that I've been hearing.
Okay, great. So we'll just give a few moments to see if there's anything anyone adds in the chat, any questions.
Yeah, any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
We're willing to make sure that your voice is heard in this moment. And we'll give a minute for that just to see if anybody's typing. So what we're seeing so far, great presentation, and thank you. And so thank you, Michelle, for guiding us in this conversation, which it's a very serious topic, as well as a topic that may not be thought about as much as that, as we think about one, caring for ourselves, what it also means to care for somebody else. If that's checking up on them and asking, how are they doing with their medication? How are they doing with their appointments? Even informing them that you can have appointments at this time, or if you need to go to your private doctor or specialist, that you can make those appointments. They may ask that they have a video appointment or a telephone conversation with you first, but that you have the opportunity to access these things. So our healthcare outside of the pandemic still goes on. And so you have to take care of that. So if you need to make appointments that are dealing with your well-being, like a therapist or a medical doctor or a dentist, just think about, that these things are still options and opportunities. So also agreed, lots of great information, much appreciation for the presentation. And so we also thank you for that, Markel. Just the opportunity to hear from Taryn, Markel, William, and thank you for just all being present during this time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. I do want to share that one thing I watched a few days ago. Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, did a state of emergency on African American like COVID and deaths and these alarming numbers. And as part of that, it's on Revolt TV through Facebook. But as part of that, he's putting together some resource guides that kind of talk about like financial opportunities and how to fill out forms for certain things and access to health. So I just really want to highlight that within our communities, that this is a time where we're seeing people stand up into leadership. And I mean, not just in the African American community, it's like across the board, people are standing up. And even though it's not their role, they are saying, this matters to me and I'll be responsible. And so I feel like there are people that are showing up and wanting to provide wellness and care and support for us during this time. And I think our attention, it's integral that our attention goes there, because if we put our attention on what we don't like and what we don't want, then that just becomes our mental state. We just see more and more of that. So I just encourage everybody to keep your eyes and your heart open for the people that are reaching out to care for others, because there are people, I feel like, that are reaching out to care for each of us. And sometimes the people reaching out will be us. But I just encourage that. And I want to thank everybody for your time. Just one more thing to share. On our website at henry-health.com, there's coping with COVID 5 tips for coping. We've pretty much covered those things today, but know the facts, take good care of yourself, relax and meditate, take action when needed, and stay connected. So this is available on our website if it's something that you want to have for yourself or to share with others. We also have one more webinar in this series. Dr. Span will be presenting on exploring wholeness and joy through community connectedness on April 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And then finally, at Henry Health, we have some other resources. We're providing wellness calls. If you feel like you just want to check in on your wellness, you can sign up for a free wellness call. We have fertility therapy. You saw the infographic on the 5 tips for coping with COVID. And then I also shared with you our additional webinars that's coming up. So thank you so much for coming. I want each and every one of you to continue to be well and be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, for being a great presentation, a presenter for today. And we want to say thank you for a great presentation. Thank you all. We hope to see you at the next webinar, and stay safe and stay well.